Hey, what is going on, you guys? Today, I'm going to be taking you step by step on how to make an interactive ETF tracker in Google Sheets. This is a phenomenal tool. It's going to help us track things like our entire ETF portfolio, our individual ETF portfolio holdings, and this will all update automatically. So if I were to be buying the SPY ETF and hit enter, you can see all this data will update automatically. We also have a chart for our allocation by sector. We have a chart where we can see how much capital we have tied up in each country. We have a cost versus market value chart. We also have an ETF screener. So let's say I want to look at the SPY. I'll type it in and hit enter. We can quickly see a 1-year trend line, and we have all this data on the ETF as well. We also have an ETF allocation chart and an allocation by country chart as well. If you'd like to be able to download this ETF tracker or any of my other portfolio trackers in Google Sheets like the ones you see here, then you can head to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the video. Okay, so now that I have Google Sheets open, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the top left and just give this a title. And I'm just going to title it ETF tracker, and then I'm going to come down here to the bottom and type out ETF dashboard. This is where our dashboard will come together. But in order to make our dashboard, we first need some data on our ETFs. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump over to a website called iShares, and this is going to provide some data for us to create our dashboard. So I'm going to click on this link, and if I come over here to the right, you can see a search bar. I'm going to type in the ticker sign for an ETF that I have bought. So we'll say IMG. This is an emerging markets, IEMG. It's an emerging markets ETF. And you should see up here on the right, we have the option to download a spreadsheet. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to open up this spreadsheet. And if we come down here and click on holdings, we can see all of the holdings in this spreadsheet. And some of this data is the data that we are going to use in order to make our dashboard. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this weight column, and we're going to turn this into a percentage. So I'm going to do that here just by dividing by 100, and we will drag this down. And I've got the decimal places right now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this data, jump back over to Google Sheets, and I'm going to paste this data into our spreadsheet. So now I'm going to start going through some of this data, and I'm going to delete some of it that we won't be needing for our ETF dashboard, but some of the data I will be keeping. So let me just go ahead and go right here and add a few rows. And it looks like the first column that we can go ahead and delete is we will delete its asset class. Let's see, so for market value, we are going to keep this column, but we actually want to delete the data, and I will come back and show you why later. We are going to delete this original weight column since we've already made one that is a percentage. Let's go ahead and delete this column as well. And then based off of looking at this, it looks like we can delete the price. And let's go ahead and delete these last 4 columns also. So now I'm just going to do some quick formatting. Let's go ahead and space this thing out. And we will center the text right here. And let me pull this out just a little bit more so we can easily see the sector. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of recenter this text right here. Let's go ahead and copy this. And let's give it an area. Let's merge these cells here. And I'll paste it right there so we can delete it here. So now we can easily see exactly which ETF we are looking at. And I'll give this outer borders, and I'll center the text into the middle. So now I want to make an area where I can actually track this ETF. So I want to see the ticker, the shares, the purchase price, and I need to see its current price. And I'm also going to want to see what my cost is and what my market value is. So the ticker for this ETF, we'll just go ahead and type it in here, was IEMG. And then you're going to want to list how many shares you purchased, and you're going to want to list your purchase price as well. And so for our current price, we're going to use the Google Finance function. You can see right here what it looks like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on IEMG, the ticker, and close this parentheses. And when I hit enter, you can see Google Sheets will automatically pull the current price for this ticker when we use the Google Finance function. So now let's just go ahead and get our cost. We're just going to multiply the shares multiplied by the purchase price. For our market value, we're going to take the shares multiplied by the current price and hit enter. So now we have some of the data that is going to be relevant to creating our dashboard. So let's go ahead and give this borders. And I'll come below here. Let me reformat that. And now we want to adjust our market value. And what we want our market value to be is the weight multiplied by the market value. So now we can see exactly how much capital we have tied up into each individual holding within the ETF. And you can see the formula I used to do that, not too complicated. So it's easy to see exactly what countries we have capital tied up in, what sector we have capital tied up in, and what the name of the company we have capital tied up in. And I'll show you how that will come into play just a little bit later. But for now, I'm just going to keep formatting this and giving this things like outer borders. Let's see if I can do this right. Let me go ahead and get rid of this data since there is no money tied up in these holdings here. And I'll give this outer borders. Let's go ahead and pull this out just a little bit so we can see this easier. So now you can see how it looks like South Korea is actually not listed correctly. We want it to say South Korea. So we're going to do a find and replace. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in how South Korea is listed here on our sheet, and we're going to put that in the find, and we're going to replace it with South Korea. And the reason I'm doing this is it's going to help us to create our geomap down the road. So we can see now it correctly is displaying South Korea how we want to see it in our Google Sheet. So now we can go ahead and move on with our next step. And what we're going to do here is we're going to list each individual country on our sheet and exactly how much capital it has tied up in it. So I'm going to type out value by location right here. And let's go ahead and give this an outer border as well. And in order to make our value by location, we are going to want to use the unique formula and highlight all of our countries. And what this is going to do is it's just going to list off each country listed one time. So there are no repeat countries in this list. And we want to see exactly how much capital we have tied up in each country. So I'm going to come over here beside this, and we are going to use a sum-if formula. And I'm going to highlight this entire list of countries. And then I'm going to come back up here to the top. And I'm going to click on the first country listed. And we want it to add the values of any country that has Taiwan listed. So now I'm going to highlight this entire market value column. And you can see now that I have double clicked and drug this formula down, we can easily see exactly how much capital is tied up in each of these countries. I'll turn this into a $sign. And let's go ahead and give this outer borders. And this is some data that we will be able to use in order to create some of our charts like I just mentioned a moment ago. So let's go ahead and highlight this and come up here to insert, and we will click on chart. And we can see it's coming up as a pie chart right now, but if we scroll down, we can click on GeoMap. And now we can see where our capital is tied up in this ETF. Let's come over here to customize, and let me go ahead and change our mid-range capital to yellow. I think that stands out a little bit better. So that's an adjustment I like to make. But this is a great way to just easily see for this individual ETF where our capital is tied up, which is something that's really important you should look into when deciding if it's an ETF that you want to purchase. So now let's just do a couple more formatting things, and I'm going to highlight this, and let's go ahead and bold this text as well, and let's increase the font size of this. And you can see, let's just go ahead and give this some color to make it stand out a little bit more. It's kind of up to you how you decide to color this, but I tend to think that the lighter colors look best, so I'm going to stick with those colors. And let's go ahead and color our value by location data in. And it looks like everything is looking correct. We can see how much capital we have tied up in each country here on this chart if we just click on the chart. And let's go ahead and title this, and I'm just going to title it the ETF ticker symbol. Okay, so what I've done is I have just jumped forward and I have repeated the exact same process that I just did for IEMG, and I added 2 other ETFs to this portfolio. So add as many ETFs as you'd like, but I just went ahead and jumped forward for the sake of time. Let's go ahead and start working on our ETF dashboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here right into the middle of my spreadsheet, and let's just go ahead and give this the title ETF dashboard. And I'm going to go ahead and center this text. We'll increase the font size, and let's see, let's try just a little bit larger. And I think that looks good, so we might stick with that font size. And if we'll come right here, we need to create an area to actually have our individual ETF data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list off the things like ticker, the shares, our purchase price, our current price. I want to see my cost basis, my market value, and I want to see my gain and my growth. So for gain, that'll be a dollar value, and for growth, that will be as a percentage. So I'm going to go ahead and create kind of an area for my 3 ETFs. Yours could be larger if you have more than 3 ETFs. But I'm just going to go ahead and list off IEMG, and I'm going to list off the number of shares I own and my purchase price. And just like last time, we're going to use the Google Finance function to pull the current price of IEMG. We'll close this parentheses and hit enter, and you can see the current price is now listed. And for our cost, we're just going to take our shares multiplied by our purchase price. And for our market value, it'll be our shares multiplied by our current price. And now we want to see, let me go ahead and fix this to dollar gain and loss. Sorry for the typo there, but we will do equals, and we're going to take our market value and subtract it by our cost. And now we can see our dollar gain. So now let's go ahead and put it in our growth. You can see how I did that there, another simple formula. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and list off my other 2 ETFs that I own, and I'll list the shares and the purchase price. And you can see if I highlight this here and drag this down, this data will all automatically fill in for us. So let's go ahead and do the same for my third ETF. I'm going to highlight this and drag this down again, and it will automatically fill in for us once again. So let's go ahead and highlight my growth column and turn this into a percentage. So now I can see exactly how much my investments have grown. And let's highlight this whole thing here. We'll give it outer borders and center this text. So now we have the first part of our ETF dashboard. You can see it's beginning to come together just a little bit. And I'm just going to do some formatting adjustments here. You can kind of see I'm closing off this column here. And if we come over here to the left, let's go ahead and make an area where we can see my overall ETF portfolio value. And I'm just going to title this top label here, Portfolio Totals. And in this area, I'm going to want to see things such as my ETF portfolio value, and that'll be the total value of all of our ETFs that we own. And I want to see my total ETF portfolio percent gain, but I also want to see it as a dollar gain. So now let's go ahead and come over here and merge these where these values each take up two different columns. And I'm going to highlight all of this, and let's go ahead and give it a border. And for our ETF portfolio value, I'm just going to do sum all of the market values of my individual holdings. And let's go ahead and get my total gain, and I'm just going to sum my gains over here, and then we need to see it as the growth. So I'm just going to take my dollar gain divided by my ETF portfolio totals cost, and we'll adjust that to a percentage, and we'll center this text as well. So now we're ready to actually make our first chart. So I'm going to highlight the ticker, our cost, and our market value. And if we click on insert and click on chart, you can see we now have our first chart. And I'm just going to make a couple slight adjustments. We'll title this cost versus market value and bold this text. And that's actually all we need to do to make this first chart. So this is a relatively easy and simple chart to make, but a really important one that I would suggest that everyone includes in their ETF portfolio tracker. So now let's go ahead and scroll over here to the right. And what I want to do over here is I'm going to make my ETF screener area. And this is one of the more advanced portions of this tutorial, so feel free to rewind if you need to, but I'm going to post some of the formulas in the description, so if you need help, just go there and copy and paste those formulas. But I'm going to come here and highlight this, and I'm going to merge these cells, and this is where I will make my trend line. But below this, I'm going to want to see things like my symbol. I want to see the current price. I want to see my volume. I want to see my days change as a dollar value and as a percent value. I also want to see my 52-week high and my 52-week low. And then I also want to know what yesterday's closing price was. And I'm going to come through and merge these to where each piece of data that I want to see takes up 2 different columns. And let's go ahead and list IEMG as the symbol here, just for an example. And so for our current price, we're going to do equals Google Finance like we have earlier and click on the cell above it. So that way, whatever ETF is listed there, it'll pull the current price. And we're going to use the Google Finance function again, click on IEMG, but this time we're going to do a comma and we're going to list off volume. And we'll close this parentheses and hit enter. And we can now see the volume for IEMG. For our days change, we're going to use another Google Finance formula. And I'm just going to type out change and close this parentheses. And we can see how it has changed dollar-wise. This time we want to see it as a percentage. So what I'm going to do is the Google Finance formula. And I'm going to type out change PCT, stands for percent. And we'll close off this parentheses and divide it by 100. And now I want to see my 52-week high. So we'll do the Google Finance formula once again, click on IEMG, comma, and quotations. We're going to type out high 52 and close the parentheses, and that'll allow us to see the 52-week high. 52-week low will do almost essentially the same thing. And then we want to see yesterday's closing price. So again, we'll use the Google Finance formula, click on IEMG, and I'll close this off and hit enter. I went through that fast, so feel free to rewind once again if you need to. And we'll center this text, it'll make it look a lot nicer. And now we're ready for our trend line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this formula here. I have tutorials going over how to do this, and you can see those on my YouTube channel, but I'm just going to copy and paste this formula in here for now. And you can see we now have our trend line in our ETF screener. So let's say if I were to change what's listed here for the symbol, everything will update automatically based off of our symbol. So now our ETF screener is essentially complete. Let's just go ahead and give it some outer borders. Again, the trendline formula is kind of complicated, but I will have that posted in the description if you need help. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit and scroll back over. You can see we have more pieces coming together on our dashboard. And let's see, looks like I need to come over here and fix this and turn this into a percent. And let's set these other pieces of data to dollar values. And I will adjust that as well. So now we're ready to make a few other charts. Let's go ahead and make a allocation by ETF chart. And this is gonna kind of help us see our portfolio diversification. And I'm gonna set this to a donut chart. And let's go ahead and change our title to ETF allocation. This will allow us to see what percent of our capital we have tied up in each ETF. So I'm just going to drag this down and set it over here to the bottom left for now. So now for this next chart, I'm actually going to have to make a new worksheet just to have some scratch sheet to work on. And I'll just title this tab worksheet. And for this worksheet, I'm going to need to see the name of each company. So I'm just going to do equals this. And let's see. Or excuse me, I need to see my location. So we'll do equals location. And I will double click here. And now we have each location listed, but we also need to see the amount of capital in each of these locations. So now I have all this data for IEMG. I need to go through and do the same for my other ETFs and just add on to the bottom here. And now I need this data for my last ETF. And using this data that we just pulled into our worksheet, our next step will be to use the unique formula once again. And I'm going to highlight my entire list of countries. And with the unique formula, each one will be listed only one time in our new column. And now we're ready to use our SUMIF formula. And this is going to allow us to see how much capital is tied up in each country. So you can see I'm going to highlight this column. We'll come over here to my new column, I highlight this, and then highlight the capital column. And when I hit enter, we can easily see how much money is located in each of these countries. And now that we have each country listed once with the capital in each of these countries, we can use this data to make our chart. So let's come over here and click on Insert, click on Chart. And I'm going to copy this chart and paste it over onto our dashboard. And this is a great way to see at a glance which countries we are currently invested in. And we can also easily see that there's a few individual countries that have the vast majority of our capital. So let's go ahead and give this chart a title. And I'm going to title this Allocation by Country. And we can come here and bold this text to make the title stand out a little bit more. And let's go ahead and delete that chart from our worksheet. But I'm actually going to use this exact same data, and we're going to use it to make a geomap to add to our dashboard. So let's go ahead and come down here and change this to geomap. And we can copy and paste this over to our ETF dashboard. And this is one of my favorite charts to be able to see when I'm looking at my ETF dashboard, because it's the best way to visually see at just a glance where our capital is located. And let me go over here and actually adjust my chart. And I want to make my mid-level tier to show up yellow. And that's just how I like to see it personally, to see where my capital is. And if you click on the chart, you can see each country will list how much money is located there. And so now we actually have just one more chart to make to add to our ETF dashboard. And for this one, we want to see an allocation by sector. So I'm going to highlight all of this sector for IEMG, and I'm going to paste it into our worksheet. Then I'm going to come here to the right, and I'm going to list the market value tied up in each of these sectors. So I'm just going to do equals and click on this, and then I will drag that down. And I'm going to repeat that same process for my other two ETFs listed. So again, we'll take our sector by copy and pasting this. Then we'll do the equal sign, and we will scroll up to the top and make it equal to the market value, and then we can double click on this and drag it down. And then we'll do this one more time for our last ETF we have listed. We'll copy and paste the industry or sector, and we will set this equal to the market value. And now we have the data we need in order to make our chart. But before we do that, we actually need to use our unique formula once again. And we'll close this off. And when I hit enter, we can see each individual sector listed just one time. And now we are going to use our sum if formula once again. And you can see how I've done this once again. Slow down the video if you need to. When I hit enter, we can see how much capital we have tied up in each individual industry. And now we can use that data to make our chart. So I'm going to highlight this. We'll go up to insert and click on chart. And it's currently showing up as a bar chart, but in this situation, I want it to be a pie chart. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over to our ETF dashboard. And we'll set this over here to the left. If we go to customize and click on chart title, we can adjust the title. And I'm going to set this to allocation by sector. And we will bold that text as well. So now we have all the charts, we have our ETF screener and the individual data up top. So really all that's left is kind of reformatting everything into a way that it fits nicely onto our dashboard. And we're going to want to do a couple other things like color some things in. But before we do that, let's go ahead and add some conditional formatting to our market value, our growth, or excuse me, my dollar gain and growth values, and also my ETF dollar gains and growth. So come up here to format, click on conditional formatting. We want anything that is greater than 0 to show up as green text. So we will set that here, and anything greater than 0 will show up green. If we add another rule, we want anything that is less than 0 to show up red. And so now we've added conditional formatting so we can quickly see visually which of our investments have performed well and which have not performed so well. Okay, so I have jumped forward and I have formatted everything and colored everything in, so we can now see what our finished product looks like. And you can see we have our portfolio totals, our individual holdings, we have all of our charts and our ETF screener. So I hope this video helped you out a lot and it's going to help you track all of your ETFs. If you'd like to be able to download this ETF tracker or any of my other portfolio trackers, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.